Hi kids, it's Mrs. Fravel. How are you? Good, me too. Hey, today we're going to talk a little bit more about ecology and specifically how organisms, the biotic parts of an ecosystem, how organisms interact with each other within their ecosystem and how their populations influence each other. Okay? And remember, keep in mind as you are watching this, you should be taking notes. I'm not going to make you upload them, but you should be taking notes because there will be a quiz on this next week. 2, always keep in mind the big question about the phenomenon that we watched, right? About the wolves in Yellowstone and how do wolves change rivers? Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, we'll look at maybe adding some evidence to your claim or rewriting your claim. Remember, that's the goal. You want to answer that question and you need to use evidence to do it. So today we're going to talk about focusing in a little bit on how predator population sizes affect their prey's population and vice versa. Okay. So really quickly, I want to go through, if we were in class, if we were doing live class, I would make you guys figure these out on your own. But really quickly, some vocabulary. If you didn't get these on your vocabulary sheet assignment, you should make sure you have them. A population, again, is all individuals of the same species living together in one area. A community is all the populations of organisms that interact with each other in an ecosystem. I know grammar. A habitat is the physical place where an organism lives, and an ecological niche is the job and the resources that organisms use for survival and reproduction. Okay, so you should know all of those words. I'm going to use them in this video. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about how many of a thing can live somewhere. We call this technically carrying capacity. The carrying capacity of an environment or of an ecosystem is the maximum number of an organism, individuals, that can be supported in a habitat, that a habitat can support. Okay? As a population increases in number, as you get more individuals in a habitat, they start to compete with each other, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But as that population grows, they start to compete with each other, and they are also exposed to more opportunities to be predated on, and I'll talk about what that means, but it's basically to be killed by a predator. Okay? So as this population grows, the habitat can only support a certain number of any individual before that habitat starts to run out of resources. And then the individuals in those populations start to die off. We see that in a downward curve, the fewer number of individuals. And then down here at the bottom of this curve, that represents the point at which the habitat starts to rebound, and the resources that that population rely on start to increase again. Okay. So the habitat starts to respond and rebound, and the population grows again because they have enough resources to reproduce and be successful. And that continues in this cyclical wave nature throughout time and across time in a habitat. And this is for every population of organisms in a habitat. And when you start to overlap them, you start to see how they reflect on each other. And I'll show you that in just a sec. Okay. Remember, this is all of the limited resources like food, shelter, and mates, as well as limiting factors like disease and natural disasters, as well as predators working together to keep this line right here pretty much as an average carrying capacity for any given population. Okay. This all keeps an ecosystem balanced. So how do communities and populations interact within an ecosystem? Okay, so these are some examples that I will explain here in just a sec. And so competition is one way that organisms interact with each other, and competition just means that 2 or more organisms or 2 or more populations are using the same resource, either the same food resource or the same habitat or space resource. Okay? And organisms can do that either within their own species, like two deer will compete to eat the same branches and the same leaves and the same grass, but also it can be between species. So the deer might also be competing with elk, different species of deer, might be competing with elk or be competing with rabbits for those same grasses and leaves. So that's interspecific competition. That's two or more between species. Intraspecific competition, when you're competing with other members of your own species. Okay. Now looking back and thinking about the video about Yellowstone, can you think of any relationships, competitive relationships that were mentioned in there, either between the wolves themselves or between their prey animals, or were the wolves competing with other predators for resources? Okay, so always keep that in the back of your mind. Okay. Okay. Sometimes competition can be at the expense of other organisms. The strongest survive. The best adapted organisms are the ones who are better able to exploit the resources that they need and survive and reproduce and grow their population to carrying capacity. Sometimes the less adapted or poorer competitors, they will actually die out. Their population sizes will go down. They may have to migrate out of an ecosystem or a habitat to find new resources. So just quickly looking back at types of competition. So hermit crabs competing for shelter. These are two hermit crabs of the same species. So this is intraspecific competition. Hermit crabs' shells, they don't build those, by the way. Hermit crabs are little crabs that have this very soft belly, this soft abdomen, and they actually find empty snail shells. After a snail has died and it leaves behind its shell, hermit crabs will move on into there and use it as their own. And as they grow, they need to find bigger ones and better ones, so they'll compete with each other for the best shells on the beach. Okay? And then hyenas and lions competing for food. Hyenas and lions are two different species. So this is an interspecific competition. Okay. Nature's brutal, man. Okay. Sometimes organisms live together beautifully and peacefully, but always keep in mind that nature is brutal and it's all about survival, even if that survival is at the cost of another organism. But sometimes they do work together to benefit each other. Okay? The word symbiosis just means that two dissimilar organisms, that means two different species of animals or organisms, this can also be plants and animals, work together in some way, or they have interactions and a relationship in some way. Sometimes that is necessary, okay, and sometimes it's not. Facultative symbiosis, you don't need to worry about writing these down. This is just nerd talk right here. But facultative symbiosis is the partners in the relationship. They can live without one another, but they do better together. So here's an example. There's a species of eel, which is, you know what eels are. They're like the big fish with the ribbon-like body that live in caves and they go like this. Okay. So there's a species of eel and a species of octopus that hunt together, and they will cruise through a coral reef and help each other find smaller prey animals like fish. Like they'll help each other corner a fish or a crab, and then they'll share it, tear it apart, and eat it. It's kind of cool to watch. It's an octopus, you guys. But they don't have to hunt together. They just sometimes do. Okay? And then we have obligate symbiosis, where these two have to exist together. One doesn't live without the other. And an example of this is, I'm sorry, I'm always ocean focused. I'll try not to be. But in the ocean, in coral reefs, corals are an animal, and they have their colors come from symbiotic algae that live inside of their bodies, and they provide the corals with food. The corals provide them with shelter. Okay, neither of them can exist without the other, and that's what coral bleaching is. The algae within their tissues dies, and then the coral ends up starving and dying. Okay. Take my marine biology class. We go all into that stuff if you like the ocean. In all cases, when we talk about symbiosis, the smaller partner is the symbiont and the larger partner is the host. All right, so there are different types of these relationships, and it just depends on how each partner, what the outcome for each partner is, if that makes sense. So we have mutualism. This is a relationship between two organisms where both of the organisms benefit from it. So for example, clownfish and anemones. So these little fingery things, those are the tentacles of an anemone. An anemone is an animal. It's related to a coral. Very simple animal, but they have stingers on those tentacles. You guys have seen Finding Nemo. If you haven't though, they have little stinging cells on these tentacles that they use to paralyze prey and also protect themselves against predators. Clownfish are these little damselfish that live in an anemone. They aren't affected by the anemone's sting. In fact, the anemones don't sting them at all. And they have this symbiotic relationship in that the clownfish can act as a lure for larger fish that want to come eat the clownfish and instead get stung by the anemone and eaten by the anemone. Okay, so that benefits the anemone. The clownfish get protection from that predatory fish that was trying to eat them because the anemone killed it. Okay, clownfish also help keep anemone clean. The anemone also shares its food with the clownfish, so they have a very tight, very beautiful relationship. Actually, I have a pet one. Couple of them. I really like them. They're fun to watch. These fish love their anemones, right? Okay, so that's mutualism. It's mutually beneficial for both. Then we have commensalism. Commensalism means that one organism's kind of taking advantage of the other one, but the other one, the host doesn't mind. It's okay. They are not benefited or harmed. Okay, so in this case, we've got this big elephant and then these little egrets. Oh gosh, I always forget the name of these birds. It doesn't matter. But so the elephant is the host. These little guys are technically the symbiont, and they have this little relationship where they follow the elephant around and they will pick insects off the elephant's hide. They will also pick insects out of the elephant's droppings after it goes potty. When the elephant defecates, beetles and flies will hurry and infest that poop and lay their eggs, and the birds will get a food source from that. It doesn't matter to the elephant whether they are there or not, but they benefit from it because they have these ready-made meals, right? So that's commensalism. And then we have parasitism. This is a picture of a tick. If you're out hiking right now, you guys, check yourselves for ticks, because we've got them up in the mountains here. So one organism benefits and one is harmed by that parasite. That's parasitism. Okay. And there's a video about all these different kinds of symbioses. I will link it underneath this video on Canvas, as long as I remember. Okay. And then the final type of interaction that we have are predator-prey interactions. And these are very important in the ecosystem. So predation technically is just the act of one animal killing another animal for food. In that relationship, the predator is the one that kills, and prey is the one that is predated upon or eaten by another animal. Both of these organisms in this relationship are very finely adapted to this relationship. So prey animals have adaptations to survive, to escape or evade a predator, right? Predators are very finely tuned and adapted to getting prey. Bigger, faster, stronger, right? And sneakier too. Ambush predators jump out at their prey. So this sometimes causes something called biological evolutionary warfare, where over time, prey populations get better and better at evading predators, and predator populations get better and better at hunting them. And over time, it can cause drastic physical adaptational changes to both of them. And this drives evolution in a habitat. Okay, so they also influence each other's populations locally. So we talked about carrying capacity, and part of one of the influences on carrying capacity is predation. So for a prey animal, they will, when there are not very many predators, so this line here, the light blue one, is prey, and the darker blue one is predators. This isn't super accurate because in general, the number of predators in an ecosystem is a lot lower than the number of prey. And we'll talk about that next week when we talk about food chains and trophic levels. But as you can see, they mirror each other. Their population sizes go in these mirrored cycles where when there is a low number of prey, the predator numbers start to decrease as well because they're not finding enough food. And then as a prey's population numbers increase because their habitat is more supportive of them, they have enough resources, then shortly thereafter in time, we see predator populations increase as well as they are exploiting more and more prey. Okay? High number of prey, as predator populations decrease, more prey, predators increase as well. And then of course, we hit the carrying capacities for both of them, and they'll start to decrease. As the prey population hits their carrying capacity, they will have fewer resources. Some of them start to die off. Not as many are there. So soon after that, we see the predators decrease. Okay. And then that cycles through over time. Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Your assignment for today is on Canvas. You have an organism interaction worksheet where you're going to look a little more closely at how predators and prey, how their populations mirror each other and interact over time. And then what I would like you to do after you do that is there is a discussion question where I want you to go back onto your CER and look at the claim that you made about how do wolves change rivers, and add any evidence that you might have gathered today that either supports your claim, or remember, you can always rewrite your claim. You could be adding more to your claim or changing some of the words in your claim based on anything that you got today for evidence. Okay? When you do change anything, all I ask is that you type it in a different color just so I can see how your brain was working through this whole unit. Okay? And there's a discussion, Unit 2, revisit your CER. I would like you to tell me what else you need to know. You tell me what you need to know to answer that question, how do wolves change rivers? Or what else are you wondering about? Why did we see this massive change in the ecosystem of Yellowstone over the last 25 years? Okay. That's all for today. I will see you on live class tomorrow. I'm sorry, on Wednesday, I hope. And be good. Wear your mask. Talk to you soon. Bye.